In the darkest days of World War II, the Pacific Ocean wasn't just water. It was a battlefield that swallowed steel, fire, and human hope. The United States Navy had never faced anything like Japan's new pride, a secret colossus, the largest warship ever built, a floating fortress known as Shinano. Its existence was a myth, its power, a warning, and its mission, destruction. But destiny is strange. Sometimes the greatest giants are brought down, not by armies, but by a handful of men hidden beneath the waves. This is the story of how one American submarine, USS Archerfish, turned a legend into a grave beneath the sea. November 28th, 1944. The waters south of Japan were eerily calm. Yet beneath that silent surface, a steel predator lurked. Inside USS Archerfish, Commander Joseph Enright scanned the horizon. He wasn't a famous hero. Not yet. In fact, many doubted him. They said he hesitated. They said he missed opportunities. But tonight, he would change history. The crew whispered in the cramped submarine. It's quiet. Too quiet. Every heartbeat felt loud. Every metal creak sounded like a threat. One mistake, and the ocean would crush them like paper. Suddenly, a silhouette. Huge. Unreal. A leviathan cutting through moonlit waves. What is that? No one could believe their eyes. Through the periscope, Enright saw the impossible. A massive carrier, bigger than any ship ever recorded. "Boys," he breathed, "that's no normal carrier." The giant they spotted was Shinano. Japan's last hope against an inevitable defeat. It carried weapons that could change the war if America didn't stop it now. But the challenge was terrifying. The target was fast, heavily escorted. Archerfish was alone. Still, Enright made his choice. We attack. Not because it was safe, not because it was smart, but because the world needed courage. Hours passed, both hunter and hunted, moving silently in a deadly dance. Inside Archerfish, sailors clenched their fists. Some prayed. Some wrote messages in their minds to families they feared they'd never see again. One crewman whispered, "If this is it, tell them I wasn't afraid." But fear lived in every corner. They were up against a monster. Then, the perfect moment. "Flood tubes," Enright commanded. The ocean trembled with a quiet fury. 6 torpedoes left Archerfish, like arrows of judgment. There was no turning back. Seconds stretched like years. Then, a roar, a scream of steel. The ocean lit up with fire. 4 torpedoes struck Shinano. The impact was so violent, sailors aboard the Japanese giant thought they had been hit from the sky. The beast slowed. It groaned, as if the sea itself were pulling it under. Panic spread, flooding, fires, darkness. But Japan was proud. They told their men, heroes do not abandon their ship. And so, they fought the ocean as the ocean swallowed them. Inside Archerfish, no one celebrated. Not yet. They waited, hoping they'd live long enough to confirm the kill. The depth charges never came. Instead, only silence and the distant cries of a dying titan. Shinano, the unsinkable, was sinking. Hundreds of Japanese sailors found themselves trapped, water rising air, shrinking hope fading. Some screamed for help. Some clung to debris. Others simply closed their eyes and let the sea take them home. War is never glorious, only tragic. At sunrise, the ocean had swallowed the legend completely. The largest warship in history, gone in its first mission, and a submarine no one believed in had accomplished the impossible. Commander Enright stood still. He knew what this meant. The war had shifted. Not with the night sea was calm. Too calm. Archerfish glided through the dark waters, her crew silent, eyes locked on the radar and scope. The giant they had been stalking for hours still moved steadily toward the Japanese coast. The submarine's commander, Commander Joseph Enright, had a decision to make, and it would change history. He whispered into the calm, "Steady as she goes. We stay with her." We finish this because Archerfish was now certain. This was no ordinary carrier. This was Japan's last hope. The final titan of the Imperial Navy. The monstrous Shinano, bigger than the Yamato, stronger than any carrier that came before her. Protected by armor meant to withstand hell itself. A ship believed to be unsinkable. But something wasn't right. She sailed with no fighter escort. No destroyers guarding her flanks. No aircraft swarming above. Only silence. Only darkness. Only fear moving across the waves. And then, a faint sound. Screws changing pitch. The Shinano began to turn, zigzagging. They knew the giant had sensed the hunter below. Inside Archerfish, tension rose like the water pressure outside. Every man knew. If they were detected, if depth charges began falling, they would not survive. But Enright had waited years for a moment like this. He had been passed over, doubted, told he lacked killer instinct. Tonight, all doubt would drown. "Bring her up to periscope depth," he ordered. "Set for attack." His voice was calm, but inside his heart pounded like gunfire. The periscope rose above the waves. Night, moonlight barely touching the sea. And there she was. A monstrous shadow stretching nearly 900 feet across the ocean. A fortress disguised as a ship. The pride of a dying empire. Enright clenched his jaw. This is it. "Fire control, stand by," but launching torpedoes at this angle would be risky. They needed the perfect shot. A strike that would cripple the beast forever. The crew moved like ghosts. No wasted movement, no panic, only resolve. The fire control officer whispered numbers. Angle on the bow. Range. Speed. Solution set. Each calculation carried 80 American lives. Each decision could bury them beneath a watery grave. Enright raised his hand. Flood tubes 1 through 4. Sweat rolled behind frozen faces. Breaths held. Open outer doors. Metal groaned as water rushed into the tubes. The final separation between life and death removed. Fire 1. A deep thud shook the sub. A torpedo glided into the dark. Then another. Fire 2. Then Fire 3. Fire 4. With each shot, Archerfish trembled like a heart skipping beats. 4 weapons of steel and vengeance raced through the Pacific depths toward history's largest warship. Now, the waiting began. Archerfish dove. Silent running, nothing more they could do. If Shinano spotted the incoming poison, it would be over. Seconds crawled. 1,000 years of suspense packed into every heartbeat. Then, boom! A roar tore through the deep. A second explosion, then a third. The sub shook. Equipment rattled. Men grabbed whatever they could. Torpedo hits. Confirmed. But the crew didn't cheer, because something horrifying happened. Shinano kept going. She refused to die. Inside the carrier, chaos erupted. Japanese sailors ran across the endless hangar deck. Holes ripped into the massive hull. Water surged inward, but the crew believed she was unsinkable. They fought to plug the wounds. They sealed compartments. They shouted. They prayed. They bled. But the damage was fatal. Even if they didn't know it yet, because Shinano had sailed unfinished. Bulkheads incomplete. Watertight doors missing. Damage control crews untrained. The giant had been rushed into war. Too late to change Japan's fate. Water spread like a silent killer. Deep into her belly. Lower decks flooding faster than pumps could fight. Still, the ship pressed onward. Still, the Japanese believed she would survive. Hours passed. Archerfish escaped the counter-search, but Enright would not leave. He kept tracking the Colossus, watching her life drain into the sea. As dawn approached, Shinano slowed. Her great bow dipped. Thousands of men stood on deck, hearts breaking as their pride, their symbol of hope, leaned toward the sea. Admiral Abe gave the order, "Abandon ship." Some refused, choosing to stay with their dying warship. A warrior's grave beneath the rising sun. The ocean swallowed the giant, screams cut short by violent waves. Then, silence. Pacific waters closed above the greatest warship ever to sink, 1 American submarine, 4 torpedoes, and an empire's final dream vanished beneath the surface. USS Archerfish surfaced miles away. The men climbed onto the deck, exhausted, stunned, emotional. They had done what no one else in history had achieved. A kill greater than all the aircraft carriers lost at Pearl Harbor. Combined. Commander Enright looked toward the horizon, where iron and men disappeared. He whispered to himself, "We did it. We actually did it." But the world didn't believe them. When Archerfish returned to port, reports were filed. But U.S. intelligence scoffed. "There is no carrier that large," they said. "You're exaggerating your claim." The Navy gave the submarine credit for sinking a standard carrier around 28,000 tons, not 70,000 plus tons, not the Titan they truly destroyed. It was an insult, a humiliation. But the men held their silence. They knew the truth. Months passed. Japan surrendered. The war ended. And only then, documents surfaced, blueprints uncovered, Japanese reports confirmed, and the U.S. Navy realized Archerfish had sunk Shinano, the world's biggest aircraft carrier. A stunned naval intelligence officer asked Enright, "How did you know? How did you find her?" Enright replied, "I didn't know." But when you see a monster like that, you take the shot. He was awarded the Navy Cross. The crew was honored as national heroes. Archerfish became a legend. History still whispers their accomplishment. A single submarine. Against a giant. Courage versus steel. Precision versus arrogance. And in the cold, unforgiving ocean, the impossible became real. Because sometimes, the smallest hunter delivers the deadliest strike. This was the day. 1 American submarine sank the largest warship in history, and the world would never forget it.